I hope the title that we've been publishing this week is intriguing to you. It's really not just a semantic issue, but it really is an issue of consciousness. So as we talk about it this morning, I invite you to see it that way. The question we're looking at, God doesn't fulfill our needs. Whoa, good. It's based, actually, it came to me when we were reading and studying a wonderful book written by the Reverend Jim Rosemergy. Jim Rosemergy was at one time an Air Force pilot in the Vietnam War. He became a Unity minister. When I was in seminary, he was the vice president of the education department at Unity, so we got to know him, and he is truly an awesome and a very mystical fellow and has written some wonderful material throughout his life and is still being a minister to this day. He asks us a very important question and starts off by saying, what God can do, God is doing. And that may seem a little bit oxymoronic in a world where we find people that are hungry and starving, where we find people who are sick and there are diseases running rampant, and we find natural disasters, and we find economic problems, and we say, God is doing what God is doing, then it begs a very important set of questions. What is God doing? And then, what are we to be doing? I think the answer comes when we shift our thinking about our idea of what God is. God is being. God is being. For example, God is life. And when we connect with that life, then we experience healing. God is the source of all things. God is wisdom. And when we connect with that wisdom, then we have insight. It's like the example that I like is one of the River Nile. Most people are familiar with that. It's the longest river in the world. And along that river have grown some of the greatest civilizations the earth has ever seen. They would not have existed if the Nile was not there. The great cultures of Egypt would not be there if the Nile did not exist. And it's a kind of a fickle river. It tends to overflow and flood sometimes. It will change its course. But in that flooding even, it brings the silt from upper and it makes the land very fertile. But it's a river that is tumultuous at times and quandary for many people. It wasn't until the mid-1800s when folks finally explored and traced that river to find its source. And the source of the Nile was this huge lake called Lake Victoria. And it was this huge body of water that just sat there. It made beautiful waterfalls, and from it came the Nile, but the water itself was just there. And that's a little bit like God. God is the source. It's just there. And then from it flows all these different things that we experience in life. And we get wrapped up in those experiences, and we might forget what the source is. And that's important for us. Because when we ask this question, what is God doing? We kind of expect Lake Victoria to do something. But it isn't going to do anything. Out of it flows the Nile, where many things happen. So then the next question is, what are we doing? We spend an enormous amount of time begging God as if we can change God's mind. And that's really a quandary. I remember when I was growing up, there was, the church was going to have its big picnic on Sunday afternoon. So we were all praying that it doesn't rain. But it was a drought, and all the farmers were praying for rain. So I kept thinking, well, what is God going to do? Is he counting? Oh, we got 10 prayers for no rain, and we got 25 for rain. I guess we better rain. I don't know that it works that way. So it's really not a question of if God could do these things, then why isn't God doing them? Because here's some of the answers, some of them I know. Folks, if we wanted, as people, as human beings today, to end world hunger, we could. If we wanted today to provide medicines for all the people in the world who needed them, you know what? We could. There are thousands of people dying in Africa because they do not have the medication for AIDS that we know exists, and we make them. So when you wonder sometimes, why isn't God doing some of these things? The really important question is, why aren't we doing some of these things? Because it's not about God doing, it's about the consciousness of our connection. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. There's a wonderful woman named Antoinette Bergenon. She was a Flemish mystic. She was born in the 1600s. She had a slight facial deformity, so her parents were really happy when, at the age of 17, they were fortunate enough to find someone to marry her off to. But since she was a little child, she wanted to give her life completely to God. She didn't want to be married to some man. She wanted to be married to Christ. So at the age of 18, before the wedding, she dressed up as a hermit, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, she snuck out of her house, and she took with her 1 penny to buy a loaf of bread. As she was walking and sneaking away, she heard this little voice that said to her, "Where is your faith? Is it in that penny?" And she realized that even though she was making a decision for God, she was still bringing the money because she was afraid it wouldn't be provided for. So she took the penny and she threw it away. She went on to start monasteries and hospitals. She did great and wonderful work. Later in her life, she had the dubious title of being a heretic, which is good because you need to know that if we were alive then, we would all be deemed heretics as well, too. So we were very much alike. But she realized the incredible value of being single-minded, of not being split between where your faith is. Is it in the money she would need for food, or was it in God? She didn't have to worry about that. Jesus talked about it in the book of Matthew. It says, you can't worship 2 gods at once. Loving one God, you'll end up hating the other. Adoration of one feeds contempt for the other. You can't worship God and money both. She knew that God could not work through a need. She knew she would need food, but God was not going to work through the need. God was going to work through her and her faith in God. Now, this is the important lesson. We need to understand God is not going to focus through a need. So I have a way to show you that. Here I have a light. Okay, I want you to imagine that right now it's really dark in my life, and I need light. If I had illumination, if I had light, I would be okay. I would find my way. I could see other people. I could comb my hair so I looked really attractive. I mean, I could be very happy, right? So I need light. Here, could you help me? Okay, go. Do something. I need light. Try rub it in your hair. See if you get some static electricity. Okay, so obviously my relationship with her is not producing any light, so I'm going to find someone else. You, sir, I'm ambidextrous. Here, hold this. Oh, you're useless. Not you. How about you, honey? Can you do something? Uh-oh. Wait, where are you going? Wait. No, you can't go there yet. You can't go there yet. I want you to give me light. Couldn't you do a workshop or something? Aren't you a licensed Unity teacher? Well, then do something. Give me light. Oh! You see, we do that. I'm very focused on this. I'm very focused that there's no light here. And now I'm looking everywhere in the world to get light. Do you have any suggestions for me at all? Oh, look here. The angel Gabriel is here. And look, we've done the miraculous. We've put God in a box. How lovely. We'll let him out when the service is over. So you'll be, or her, it. So do you have any advice? Thank you, God. It's nice for you to come on Sunday. So, okay, I'm still looking for light. Any suggestions? What? God is here. Yes, thank you. Thank you, God. But you see, I need light. What's that? Plug it into God? Really? Yeah, but I need light. This is my need here. I don't know that I really need God. I have enough. I go on Sundays. I read the daily word. So you think if I just connect here, okay. Did you get it? I really want you to get the point. When we focus on our need and we seek out in the world for our need to be answered, we're going to stay in the dark. It will not be met until we connect or plug in to God. This is why Jesus said, when you seek first the kingdom, everything else is answered. Okay? So no matter what is going on, if we need, oh, I'm so lonely, I need a relationship, great. So I'm going to look all over the world for a relationship. The answer is plug in to God. Okay? Now, it may not make sense to you now, but how is not our business. How it unfolds is God's business. Okay? You say, well, but I need the right perfect job. I have to really go out and look for the job. I have to really scour. I got to do all that. And we forget to do this. This is what we need to do. You see, God doesn't work through the need. It works through us. The very simple... Gabriel, you are awesome. Thank you. Look how you light this. So beautiful. So here's the truth, folks. God is our source, and our God consciousness is our supply. The God consciousness means I have stopped looking out there and I'm looking here. Does that make sense to you? It's a simple message, but boy, do we forget it all the time. And that's why I'm trying to give it to you now. Charles Fillmore is the co-founder of Unity, and he said it this way: if you would demonstrate true prosperity, which means an abundance of all good things in our life, you must turn from things and, as Jesus told his disciples, have faith in God. Do not have faith in anything less than God and anything other than the one mind, for when your faith is centered there, you are building for eternity. That's what Jesus said too. Now you say, well then, what's all the point of all this need? Why is all this here? Do you remember in the very beginning of this service, I talked about how we sometimes have these challenges in life and that they are part of a divine curriculum that moves us forward? The simple truth is, all of the needs we have a purpose. They have one purpose, and one purpose only, and that is to turn us around to plug into God. We won't learn that lesson until we've tried to answer it every other way, and then we get the wall, and then we go, okay, I need to go to God. Jesus has a perfect example of that in a very famous story that's found in the 6th chapter of the Gospel of John. Let me read it to you. This is when there were 5,000 hungry people that came to hear Jesus talk. Now, that's a pretty big need. When Jesus looked out and he saw that a large crowd had arrived, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread to feed these people?" Well, they were in a big field. Jesus knew pretty well that there wasn't going to be any bread. Now, this is going to give us a clue about how Jesus thought of these things. He said this to stretch Philip's faith. He already knew what he was going to do. This is where you find and can get acquainted with what we know as the sneaky Jesus. So, Philip, where are we going to get bread for these people? And he knew. Philip said, 200 silver pieces wouldn't be enough to buy bread for each one of these people, even to have one piece. We need 200 pieces of silver, God. We need money. And then one of the disciples, Andrew, he chimed in too. He said, there was a little boy here who has only 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but that's a drop in the bucket for a crowd like this. So you hear them whining to Jesus? We don't have enough money. We don't have enough food. Now, how many times have each one of us at one point or another taken a look at our checkbook and we said, oh, that's not even a drop in the bucket of what I need? Or how many times have we looked at our life and we looked at the people in our life and the amount of love or the amount of affection or the amount of anything we're getting from people, and we say, oh, that's not even a drop in the bucket of what I feel like I need in my life. We all experience that at some point or another. Now, here's what Jesus does, and this is where we get the clue. Jesus said, make the people sit down. There was a nice carpet of green grass in this place. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. They sat down, and then Now here's where it happens. Here's the need out here. 200 pieces of silver. We need enough fish to feed 5,000 people. And what did Jesus do? He got everybody to sit down, be quiet. And then Jesus took the bread and gave thanks to God. What did he do? Did he focus on the need? He turned around and he plugged in. You get it? He plugged in, and then he gave the food to those who were seated, and he did the same with the fish. And everyone ate as much as they wanted. You see what happened? He taught them. In the midst of, I need this, we need that, there's not enough this, there's not enough that, he turned around and he plugged in to God. It's a pretty clear message. Our earthly needs are met not as we give attention to them, but as we give attention to God. The Bhagavad Gita says it really beautifully as well. This is God speaking there through Krishna, and says, I provide everything for the person who wants me above everything else and who constantly thinks of me. I add to what he already has and comfort him with absolute security. In the Christian tradition, the great apostle Paul was an itinerant preacher, and he traveled from church to church, and he didn't seem to have a lot of any way at all to make money. But at one point he said to them in his letter to the Philippians, now I have it all, and I keep getting more. You can be sure that God will take care of everything you need, his generosity exceeding even yours. So the way my invitation to you then is in this coming week and in the days and months to come, when you get absorbed with your needs in life, to remember to stop focusing on that, because what we focus on will expand, and instead turn your attention to focus on God and let that consciousness expand in you. And the promise is every need will be met. Here's an affirmation I'm going to invite you to say aloud with me that we can speak throughout this week to change our minds and change our lives. I turn away from needs and turn to God. Will you say it with me together? I turn away from needs and turn to God. That's all we need to know. I'm going to invite you into a time of meditation. And in this meditation, I'm going to begin by reading to you a prayer from Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk, a true mystic. In our generation, he passed away in 1968. I think it's hopeful and encouraging to know that there are still mystics in our world. So as you close your eyes for just a moment, I'm going to read this prayer to you. And I invite you to make it a prayer of your own heart. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road. Even though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. In these quiet moments, I invite you to turn away from the needs in your life and to turn to God, knowing that you will never, ever be left alone. Do this, if you will, as we come to God together now in the sacred and holy silence.